Yeah. Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Dicky. As what Chin mentioned, that I used to live by Clement Place. So before that, I already lived in that same place for about 8 years before the place was built. So starting in 2019, well, actually in 2018, they proposed to build a permanent shelter for the homeless. So I came to the meeting and I voiced some concern because that location was close by Aurora when there are already a lot of drugs transaction and a lot of sex worker there. So I voiced my concern along with the disruption of the building the homeless shelter there. Um, it is going to be like a permanent homeless shelter. So I did mention that, okay, how about for parking? How about, like all the drugs issue that we're having around this area? I'm afraid that it will get worse as we build this homeless shelter. I'm not saying that all homeless is like that, but I'm just saying that it will have much more incentive for any drug dealer to approach that vulnerable population. So I came to the meeting before the proposed shelter was built, and I voiced a concern, and they told me that at that time, oh yeah, you shouldn't be worried about that. It will be 24/7 station by by the staff there. So and then I mentioned about how about parking and will that be causing like any crowded issues in terms of the parking area? And the reason being because when they showed the blueprint of the proposed shelter, there are no parking spots. There's only like two parking spots, and that's it. And they are planning to build 99 units there. So that's why it is one of my concern as well, because it's not easy to find parking there. And they told me that the population where people will live there was a chronic homeless, so they won't have a car. So okay, so that's not a problem. So I think the next like 1.5 years, they built that property, the building, and when they start building that, of course, it's causing a lot of noises, but that's just like a construction noises, and they pretty much block the area for parking for their truck. And when they do that, I wasn't able to park my car. And when I tried to park my car, I actually get ticketed for that, which I'm not that happy about because, that's where I usually park my car. But now, like, once the building is done and everything was built, then I start getting like some issues. Like, first it's kind of small. It's like noise issue. And then once they start filling up the building with more residents, and again, I would say it's not all of them, but there are some bad apples there. And whenever like I give them a call, I call the building, hey, this thing like causing these issues, and there are a lot of fightings as well between the residents or even the visitors. And there are a lot of noises at night. And this really bothers me because I have a newborn daughter at that time. And there are a lot of swearing at night. And when I say this, I have all the recording because we as a neighbor, we work together, we take pictures, we have recording, and I also have my own security camera in front of my house. So we capture all these things with videos, photos, and we sometimes like we tell them about that. Hey, I saw that one resident, for example, bring their dog and then poop in front of my house, and they didn't even take care of it. They just leave it there. And when they deny, I say like, hey, I have photos and a video and to prove that. And then after, okay, they clean it up. And the same thing with trash. A lot of the times when I mention it, they will clean up the trash, but then like it will come back again the next day. There's also like a lot of needles. And again, I don't know if this is something that the residents use or this is more from the visitors to the residents or friends of the residents, and it will attract other homeless as well, I would say, because I have seen an increase of a pitch tent in around that area. When I reported this to Clement Place, they told me that outside of their building is not their responsibility. Then I report through the app, the Seattle Find It, Fix It app. And at that time, because it's COVID, they told me that they won't do anything about it. So me as the resident, I feel helpless. And I do understand that they are trying to mitigate some of the issue. For example, there is like one very problematic resident that always get into fight with some other residents. And he has a car. And again, like when you think that there won't be like any car, there will be a lot of car and there will be like a lot of junk cars. So the cars is either not running or making a lot of noises, and they always put it on, what do you call it? Like when you try to change your tire, they just put it on there. Maybe there is like a restriction in city of Seattle. If the car is in that condition, it cannot be towed. So they always try to do it. It's kind of like a workaround. So their car did not get towed because I don't see any license, like the license plate, the tab is expired. Maybe that's how they go around. Like if the car is currently fixed, you won't be able to tow it. I don't know. Like I don't really look up the specific laws about that. And in that in front of that parking lot, there should be only up to uh, like 24 hours parking. Like you should not park more than 24 hours. But I have seen that cars park for a week and taking places like where it's never run anyway. I don't see like the car is being used for, and it's just put there and it's just junk cars. So there's like one of these resident of Clement Place that's, as I mentioned, always get into a fight, and that he will rev the car regardless whether it is 6 p.m., 2 a.m., or 6 a.m. It's very loud and it's making a lot of noises. And whenever someone tries to approach him and tell him not to do it, he will get into a fight with that person. I myself, I don't want to like get into a fight because if I approach him, I know he probably will confront me. Finally, that guy was kicked out from Clement Place. When that guy is kicked out from the Clement Place, he's still loitering around outside of Clement Place, setting up a cart, staying there, and also his car was still there. And believe it or not, at 2 a.m., one day after he get kicked out, the car was burned down. And the car was parked in front of our house, in front of the community house, not in front of the homeless shelter, is in front of our community. So like we live in the townhouses and the car was burned over there. And again, I have the video of that. It was really scary. And there are a lot of fire truck coming in, try to put off the fire. And also after that, there's a lot of shouting at night. Here's what I can tell you, like there will be like shouting at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And if you report them, then they will, maybe sometimes they will take care of it. The other time they will not. So I'm telling you this story not because I want you to be afraid, but this is just from my personal experience. And I end up moving out from that place from like last year. So I moved out from that place and I end up moving to Shoreline. And in Shoreline, they also tried to build this homeless shelter on Aurora. And I came to do a lot of the Shoreline City Council meeting, and I gave the same testimony as this. A lot of the time, it's not the issue with the residents. A lot of the time, it's the issue with the resident that has been kicked out because of their troubled behavior. And then they're still loitering around that area. And when I call them, they don't want to be responsible because it's outside of the building. So that's the issue, the majority of the issue that I'm facing when I still live there. In Shoreline, they end up changing from the low barrier shelter into an enhanced shelter. That's what they call it. So you're not allowed to use alcohol or drug in order to be admitted. And it is a temporary shelter. I'm actually concerned temporary shelter will be worse, but now they end up putting on that restriction. And I don't live right in front or like very close by the shoreline shelter. I live about 5 blocks away, so I don't really have a day-to-day experience. But what I know when I live in Clement Place, I have seen multiple police and fire truck coming in up to 5 times a day, and sometimes blocking like the whole street. So I cannot even take out my car. And not all that. Sometimes they will carry the residents, put it in the ambulance. I'm not sure like what happened to them. Maybe they're overdosed. Maybe they slip and fall down. But there are a lot of those every day. I will hear either a police or an ambulance or a fire truck coming into the place. I have moved out from that place for a year right now. So I just trying to give you my experience when living in that place in front of the Clement place for 2 years. But this should be able to give more background on how is it on the recent experience. The reason when I approached the DSC, they told us that usually like for the first 2 years there will be issues, but then after that it will get better. So I move out when it's the end of the 2 years after they built that shelter. So going forward, I heard some things that it might still causing some issue, but Fanish should be able to tell you better. So that's a little bit about my experience. There are more experience that I heard from the neighbor in front of Clement Place where their daughter keep hearing some shouting and swearing and starting to wet her bed again. We actually have an email correspondence from that neighbor because we have this neighborhood mailing list. So that's what I've been hearing when I live on that in the house by the Clement Place. And on top of that, when I sold my house less than what my neighbors sell their house 2 years ago or like a year ago. So when they say that it doesn't reduce the property value, this is from my personal experience that I end up selling my house less than what my neighbors selling their house 2 years ago. And it's about 130,000 less. And from last year, it's about like 30,000 less. So, so because last year they already start building this, but 2 years ago it's completely like it's just still in the planning. So there's nothing built around that area. So that's from my experience. I know they say the study say it will either doesn't reduce the property value or it might actually increase the property value. But that has not been my experience when I sold my house. That's a little bit about my experience. Feel free to ask me any question afterward, and I can turn it over to Venice if she has anything to add for a more recent experience.
Thank you, Dickie.
Yes.
There's a question posted. What type is the shelter at the shoreline shelter right now? What is the term?
They call it the enhanced shelter. They've been calling it the enhanced shelter, but it's like they will allow and alcohol. But because so many shoreline residents opposed to it, they end up changing that. So they're putting restriction, they're putting agreement. You can actually search if you look for North King County enhanced shelter, you will be it will actually say that it is not a wet shelter. You cannot use drugs and alcohol.
It's called the North King County Enhancement Shelter.
Enhanced shelter, that's correct.
Okay. And it used to be low barrier. Now, because of a public demand, they changed to enhanced.
They propose it to be a low barrier, but then because and this before that they want to have it as an enhanced shelter that allows drugs and alcohol, but because go through the public meeting, they end up changing it, so they don't allow drugs and alcohol at the shelter.
Okay, good. Okay, so Dickie, would you be able to stay around and answer questions?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. But
okay, and then
sometimes I will take care of my daughter. So.
Okay, yeah, let's have Venice.
Yes.
Would you be able to share your experience? You also
Sure,
did
I'll,
that
I'll, I'll share a
too,
little bit with you guys.
right?
Much of what Dickie, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, much of what Dickie has shared is quite a bit of it is continuing. I moved in here in May of 2019 when I bought my place. I was new to Seattle, so I didn't know what Seattle is about. I didn't know the areas. My realtor told me that it was a good place, and it was going through regentrification, but it was not it was part of Greenwood, and it was a good area. And when I came and saw the townhouse, the townhouse was nice, but I had concerns about, there's a recycling metal plant, right, shop right at the top of the road, and there's quite a bit of noise in the morning. But getting to Clement Place, after, as Dickie explained, when they moved in, and coming to the last year, in the last year, we have had a continuation much of what had gone on. It goes in ebb and flows, where sometimes things quiet down and then it flares up. What you see, a lot of the activities happened in the spring to the summer, right, where you see a lot of issues. Some of the issues we see is where they use the street as a permanent place to park their cars. I have pictures of a van, its registration, that I have called in several times to find it, fix it. Nothing happens. They close the case, and the van is still there. We have the streets used as a garage where they're fixing cars. They leave the spilled oil on the street. We find a lot of dumping. At one point, I started to have rats over here in my yard. I had to pay considerable amount of money to eradicate these rats, which I think they were directly linked to the garbage that was. They have a platform at Clement Place that they have a lot of garbage that they put on it. That people throw garbage out there, and it festers. We also had a problem where I spoke to Sheila, who is the person who's in charge over there, because at one point they would leave their their garbage bin, which was always overflowing and rotting on the street. And I wrote Sheila all of these things. I'm telling you, I have documentation that I've written to Sheila. I try to have a good relationship with her so that I alert her. In fairness to her, there are many times when you call her or you email her, she tries to fix it. But the situation is that they fix it, but it occurs, as Dickie said, the next week you have the same problem. The next month it's recurring. And so it's really a Band-Aid. Those are some of the problems we have. Other issue we have, we don't know if they have done it, but we have, Dickie, since you've left, we've had the post box graffitied, a side of the house coming in graffiti. We don't know if it's them. What we know is that all of these things are happening since they're coming. Specific things that I have actually encountered as it relates to them is I have had several times their resident, assaulting me verbally. Just as recent as Sunday, I was walking down the road, and one of their members asked me for cigarettes and money. And when I told him I had neither of the two, he proceeded to get up and in my face to tell me that I am a fat, black, lying, and that B word. I wrote Sheila. She was on leave. I called the police. They have taken the case, and they're in they have the, what do you call it? The Clement Place have given the information about the individual to the police, and right now I'm waiting for the police because I'm sure as hell going to be pressing charges. I'm afraid I don't have any better news to tell you guys. It's more of the same. What you're going to be having is, unless they change the situation, up to this evening, by the way, when I was coming in, one of their members was smoking not pot, but was basically freebasing with a spoon right as you come in, right near to the shop, right near to where the restaurant is. The person who owns a restaurant, he can tell you quite a bit about them. They have broken the glass in his door, in the areas of his shop. He has had to replace it. It has been, they litter the place. Another issue we have is that they'll clean up sometime their area, and then they would come to our area and they would smoke cigarettes in the corridor where where we drive in. I have found condoms in there where apparently, they're there at night. It's just been ghastly. I mean, never in my life have I experienced this kind of, just, it's just immoral. And, constantly whenever you speak to Sheila or the others, their first thing is normally not their people. Normally what we do is send them videos and, and photographs. So when she told me, for example, her bin was taken up every day for 2 weeks, I recorded the date and the time of the bins being out on the street consecutively week after week. When I sent her those videos, then she said, okay. And then she started getting the bin taken off the street in a minute. The truck, the Wednesday come and they've delivered the garbage. What we find is that their first attitude is to say, oh, that is not so. And so what we have done as a group of people here, it's only 16 townhouses, is to record everything that they do so that we are able to, to provide facts that this is what happened. Because their first thing is to say, one, it's not their people, or it did not happen, right? So this has been my experience with them. Camping, we have had, I sent you some pictures just kind of showing you camping, the vans, all of this stuff, and it's continuous. It may slow down for a period of time. The most peaceful days are in the winter times especially when we have snow, when they cannot be on the street. And so at that time, we may be able to have a bit of peace. Every day, it's DSC that operates Clement House, and I have all their information and the different folks. Just recently, as I said to you, I was accosted by one of their people where pretty much, they responded to me, apologizing and all of that. And I suspect that one of the reasons why they have quit to respond and to be so apologetic is because of the fact that the police is involved and I am pressing charges. So, it's, for example, Olivia Jelensky is a project coordinator there. She has reached out to me. When you look at her email that she sent to me, it's about, oh, we're glad that you're able to get away and, you were not harmed. And I responded to her. I mean, I have shared those emails with Joel, the back and forth with them, where pretty much, I should not have to be trying to escape from their people. We have had several incidents. I have had 2 times where I have been verbally abused by them, and several residents here have had situations where they have verbally abused them, because what you found is that they keep saying that they would beg you for cigarettes. I've had visitors come to visit me and they've been intimidated by them. So it's not a good situation. The place over there is a forever home. And basically, I believe that they may have good people over there, but I'm yet to see any. Just as recently as a couple months ago, I came home and I was on vacation. When I came back at 12:30 a.m. one night, I heard gunshots in the street. When my alarm, I've had to spend copious amount of money on security, alarm systems, fortifying my sod gate. When I heard the gunshots, my light was on because I tend to stay up late. Then very shortly, I had a sex worker at my door, ringing my doorbell, asking for help, and she had a gun. I reported it to the police, who came 58 minutes later. They confiscated the gun. They found her and they confiscated the gun. But all of these elements, you know, it is, for me, it has caused me severe anxiety. This stuff has really, I have never lived in such a place in all my life. I've lived in the States for over 20 years, and I've never experienced what I'm experiencing. I've never heard gunshots in my neighborhood. I have never had people stealing things. I've never had people trolling. I have seen their people trolling, where they troll your house in the night trying to find anything to steal. You have to put on extra locks on your door. And as Dickie said, we're not trying to frighten you, but as long as that place continue to be a low barrier place where they allow every and anybody inside of there, it is going to continuously be a problem. You cannot have people that are mentally deranged and or drug addicts, and you're facilitating that, you know, there. It just doesn't work, and that's the plain truth. I don't know what else to tell you. Unless things change, unless things change where they change the type of people that are there, it's continuation of the same. It may get better for a few days and it goes right back.